Welcome back. This is week 4 of making an underwater exploration game as a solo indie dev. After a whole 2 weeks of thinking, I still can't figure out what to name my game, so please, for my own sanity, drop some ideas in the comments. Without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I did this week was look at my weekly goals checklist. I wrote this at 2 AM, so don't expect anything fancy. It looks like the first thing to do was to design some new creatures. When I wrote this, I think I wanted to model a few different types of fish or plants, but I ended up wanting to make a new Leviathan, after all. The last time I had done that was in the first devlog, about 3 weeks ago. Second, I wanted to double down on the behavioral system. The last Leviathan didn't do much other than wander around aimlessly, like some kind of disoriented sushi. I also wanted to create a UI system and implement it functionally, which I didn't have time to complete last week. First things first, designing a bunch of creatures felt like it would take way too long, so I poured all of my energy into designing one creature. This was my first time trying out a new sculpting workflow in Blender, but I'm really proud of the result. I tried to texture paint the model, but after I finished animating, the texture paint would all be gone. Whenever I'd redo the texture painting, my animation would just disappear. It was like playing an exhausting game of whack-a-mole, so I decided to just use the shading window in Blender. The colors that I chose ended up looking a little bit strange, but once I brought them into Unity, I decided not to go through the struggle of changing them. Once I started playing around with it, I thought it fit pretty well with the graphics of the game, but it made me realize that one creature in particular looked a little bit out of place. The very first creature that I had made for this game, even before I had made the player. It had been here since the very first devlog, but unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. Nope, too sad, so we're just going to leave it in the game for a little while longer. I wrote a script that made the monster, which I decided to call the Clownface LEVIATHAN, attack the player. It patrols around an area, similar to the last Leviathan, but now, when the player enters its line of sight, it dashes towards them. The only problem is that right now the player is completely immortal. There's no way of taking damage or regaining health. With that in mind, I decided to tackle the next goal, which was to make some UI. I didn't like the way the UI from the last video looked, so I decided to delete it and start sketching up some new designs. I ultimately decided on going with a simple oxygen tank, which I thought was pretty straightforward, and communicated pretty clearly what it was used for to the player. With a few tweaks in my code, it was working well. I had a little bit more time, so I decided to lay the groundwork for the scene transitions. Even though your oxygen could technically run out now, thanks to our UI system, nothing happened when those levels were depleted. So I decided to draw up a death screen, and use that as a bridge between scene transitions when you die. You see, I wanted the player to use a town as their home base to sell fish and upgrade their equipment. However, at the moment there was no town or place to do that, so I decided to make a fresh new scene and called it Town. The town consisted of a dock and a blue background. Not that impressive, I know. But right now, the only thing I was focused on was the scene transition. It took a while to get right, but once it was, it looked pretty good. That's everything I did this week. I think this might have been one of the most productive weeks yet. I didn't have enough time to put it into this video, but I did start the process of integrating weapons onto the player, which is something you'll definitely see next week. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.